24 different players that will change your outcome in week 6 of fantasy football. 12 different players you should start, 12 different players you should sit. We are going to work our way down from the quarterback position all the way through to the tight end. We'll start with our quarterback starts of the week. Cameron, since yours is already up on the screen, tell us why Caleb Williams is your start of the week.
He's actually thrown for 300 yards in 2 of the last 3 weeks. I feel like as the number 1 overall pick, that would have been bigger news. But I think the issue is just Jaden Daniels has just been on fire the last couple weeks. So he's getting all that rookie quarterback hype. But 300 plus yards and multiple touchdowns in 2 of the last 3 weeks is pretty good. From a fantasy perspective, he's showing he does have a pretty solid rushing floor. 5 rush attempts in all but 1 game so far this year. And then now he gets Jacksonville, who's allowing the most passing yards per game, just got lit up by Joe Flacco last week, and the 4th most yards per attempt. So great matchup. Looks like he's starting to figure it out, get on a roll. I really like Caleb Williams in this one.
I'm willing to play any quarterback or wide receiver against Jacksonville. I mean, they are the one matchup you can target almost every single week and get guaranteed production from the position. Ty, you're actually lower on Caleb Williams than Cameron and I. Cam, you have him at quarterback 12. I'm at quarterback 13. If you need to stream him this week, I'm a fan of that. But you're all the way down at 17. Why is that?
Just because I couldn't flip my arguments on the Chicago Bears offense after just 1 week against the Carolina Panthers. But I mean, credit where credit's due. Caleb is playing much better right now. But I'm still not there yet with trusting a Shane Waldron offense. I get the matchup is super nice. I just can't pull myself there just yet. I might be flipping about Caleb Williams next week. Who knows? But I think for right now, I'd rather just trust with what I've seen the past 5 weeks and knowing that the Shane Waldron offense has only really clicked 1 week so far this year.
I cannot fault a man for not wanting to trust Shane Waldron yet after getting burned by him the first few weeks. So I am perfectly okay with that. But at the same time, the matchup is there. If you need to stream Caleb Williams, I think he is one of your top streaming options this week. Ty, I'm going to come right back to you for your quarterback start of the week. And I'm not going to lie. If you didn't take him, I was definitely going to take this player as my quarterback start of the week.
Yeah, Dak Prescott going up against the Lions. It's kind of the beauty of doing my rankings first out of the 3 of us because I get my pick of the litter, essentially. But look, Detroit is allowing the 6th most passing yards per game on the year to quarterbacks. And there's probably going to be an extra reliance on the passing game for Dallas just because of how well Detroit has been playing against the run. So, yeah, we saw Rico Dowdle go for 20 carries last week. I think it's going to be a tough sledding for Rico Dowdle this week, even more work than for Dak Prescott to keep this game close. In just last year, when these 2 teams faced, he threw for 345 and 2 touchdowns. This matchup this year, highest point total of the year at 52.5. So I'm expecting Dak to come through big time. The matchup allows it. And I just love knowing that I'm the lowest of the 3 of us when it comes to Dak, and he's still my start of the week. So I'm glad that you guys see the upside this week with Dak.
I mean, the Detroit Lions defense is a pass funnel defense. They will not give up anything on the ground to you. They are a brick wall at the line of scrimmage, but you can toss the rock all over their secondary because they're that confident their offense can keep up with you. And if you can't run the football on them, you just become a one-dimensional offense then. So, yeah, Dak, I think he is in for a massive week this week. I have him as a top 5 option. And Cameron, you're very in on him too.
Yeah, I think we could honestly see a game similar to that Baltimore one where Detroit goes, we can run the ball all day long. And so we're going to, and Dak just has to throw the ball 50 times because they just never have time of possession and they just need to put up points. And, you know, he had 50 attempts for 380 yards and 2 tutties, and that one was a quarterback 2 on the week with almost 30 fantasy points. I see that within the realm of possibilities for him this week.
Before we keep it moving here to my quarterback start of the week, I want to stop and pause. I want to talk to the 93% out there. Okay, by this point, if you're a returning user on the channel, you know exactly where I'm going with this. The 93% of you who watch our content but yet haven't subscribed. We're going to change that really quick. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications as well. You'll be alerted when all of our newest content is out. You're not reliant on it being suggested to you by YouTube. you'll get a notification right away as soon as our newest content comes out. So we're grateful for those of you who do subscribe, who do watch our content every single week. It brings us a lot of joy that we are starting to build a steady community here that comes back and watches our videos every single week over here on YouTube. So we appreciate you all. But if you're part of the 93%, you can still change that. You can become a part of the fellowship, the 7% that subscribes and watches our videos.
Fellowship.
The fellowship. That's the third video in a row I've mentioned that now. I think we're going to milk that as much as we can.
Oh, yeah.
Patreon? Somebody say
Absolutely.
Patreon? No Patreon yet, but we can make that happen. My quarterback start of the week, Kirk Cousins of the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, he is coming fresh off 500 yards on Thursday Night Football, right? Gets a divisional matchup now with Carolina Panthers, who the Carolina Panthers cannot defend anybody this year. Like, we talk about how they couldn't stop the run, even if the fate of the universe was on the line. But 4 out of 5 quarterbacks play the Carolina Panthers this year have scored 20 plus fantasy points. The only quarterback who didn't was Justin Herbert. We're starting to see this offense progress more. We're starting to see Kirk Cousins, move around to the pocket more, take more snaps from under center, do more play action dropbacks. We're starting to see this offense settle in a little bit more. What better way to keep that on track than by torching the Carolina Panthers in a divisional matchup this week? I think it's a big week for Bijan Robinson. I think you see a little bit of Tyler Algier mixed in too, but again, this defense literally cannot stop anybody right now, and I am perfectly fine streaming Kirk Cousins this week, and especially if you got a guy like Patrick Mahomes on by this week, like Kirk Cousins is one of the top guys I'm looking at.
Yeah, it's honestly got to be a little bit of a breath of fresh air that you have a reason to put Patrick Mahomes on your bench, right? Because of how it has been. But the best thing to happen to this Panthers defense in fantasy is that Andy Dalton came in, because they're starting to actually put up points. Last week they really didn't, but they're putting up points where it's okay for teams to throw the ball. That was the issue last year, is they couldn't put up any points. So teams just ran the ball all over them and never had to throw. Well, this year teams are looking to throw. That's why, like you said, 4 to 5 quarterbacks have 20 plus fantasy points. I would be shocked if Kirk isn't at least, 18 plus this week.
Ty, he's also top 12 quarterback for you. So you share in my sentiments that Kirk Cousins is a very viable streaming option this week.
He was my backup start of the week if I didn't take Dak. So everything that you said, I am in complete agreement with.
With that, we'll move on to quarterback sits of the week then. Cameron, we'll start with you. Who's your quarterback sit?
It's Trevor Lawrence. And I just want to say, for all 3 of these, we understand they're gross names.
Yeah.
But like we said before, you're already losing Patrick Mahomes, Sam Darnold. Pickens have kind of been thin this year at the quarterback position already. So these are guys that maybe have had a good week or two in the past, week or two. And we're just saying, don't fall for it. And that's what Trevor Lawrence is. Trevor Lawrence was in a 37-34 game last week. He was, a top 10 quarterback for the first time all season. He was a top 15 quarterback for the first time all season. But he was playing in Indianapolis. And Indianapolis is allowing almost 100 more passing yards per game than Chicago so far this season. So it's a very different defense. I think this is going to be more of what we've seen from Trevor Lawrence so far. And it's in London. So I think that just adds an extra. We don't really know what's going to happen.
Right.
And you could see a Sam Darnold-esque game where you get 6 fantasy points from him, an Aaron Rodgers-esque game where he throws 3 picks. Like, I don't think either of those are other own possibilities for Trevor Lawrence this week.
Man, I still want to believe so much in Trevor Lawrence, man.
So do I.
There's some things that he does exceptionally well, but then there's just some glaring accuracy issues. And I'm like, how do you go from shifting your center last second to make a different read across the middle of the field to a different wide receiver that you didn't even see until you went through your reads again? I mean, he does some incredible stuff where I'm just like, that is elite level stuff. And then there's other times where I'm like, you miss Gabe Davis downfield by a hefty 10 yards. And it just baffles me. And Ty, you're in agreement here. I mean, quarterback 19 for you, 2 spots ahead of Cameron, but still 1 spot lower than me.
Yeah, it's the matchup for me with Chicago. Chicago has been very, very good against quarterbacks this year. With how inconsistent, with how poor it's been in Jacksonville, there's too much working against Trevor to have any kind of faith in him this week.
I'll come right back to you, Ty. Who's your quarterback sit of the week?
My QB sit of the week is Geno Smith, and this is like the Sam Darnold sit of last week, right? Sam Darnold goes into week 5 as the quarterback 4. Geno goes into week 6 as the QB 5. But as you can see, we are very much on the sit side for Geno Smith this week. In his 3 starts against the San Francisco 49ers, he's averaging just 205 yards, and he's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns. And on top of that, the Niners this year are allowing the 8th fewest passing yards over the last 2 weeks, 12th lowest per game on the year. The most allowed was 268 to Minnesota, which, yeah, you could be like, well, if Sam Darnold could throw for 268, I think all 3 of us would agree that, like, that's Kevin O'Connell absolutely just scheming things up for that offense than Sam Darnold himself. And the next highest that they've allowed was 221 to Matt Stafford in a game that they lost. So yes, there is the potential that like garbage time yards for Geno Smith could salvage the week. I just haven't seen it from Geno in prior matchups against San Francisco that gives me any kind of confidence that's all going to change this year.
Yeah, this isn't to negate your pick by any means. I think you set it up perfectly by saying Geno Smith is currently the quarterback 5 going into this matchup. Everybody and their mother seems to be fading Geno Smith this week. So he is a very easy one of fantasy football matchups to avoid, despite him being a top 5 quarterback right now. And Cameron, anything you want to add, because your ranking says you agree?
Yeah, it's just a tough matchup, and if you can pivot to other places, then I think I would. The only real reason I see you having to start Geno is if you had probably a Mahomes. I guess I shouldn't say that. Tua is out. Anthony Richardson might be out. So you might have to start. you might have to. I don't think Geno is going to have the worst week. I just think against this San Francisco offense, that upside is extremely limited. So I think if you have to start him, he's not going to kill you, but you're not going to see that top 10, top 12 finish is kind of the way I view Geno this week.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. You definitely won't be seeing top 12 upside from Justin Herbert this week, who's my quarterback sit of the week. There's literally no reason to roster Justin Herbert unless you're in a 2 quarterback league right now. I mean, this is a guy who has yet to score more than 12 fantasy points in a game this year. And Denver has been giving up only 11.8 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this year. So that's less than Justin Herbert's highest game that he has scored this year by only 2.2 points. That's not great. This game is going to be disgustingly low scoring. Okay, this is 2 teams that are just going to shove the football down each other's throats by running it all day long. Going to look for J.K. Dobbins to get going. You're going to look for somehow this Denver rush attack to get going, because Lord knows they don't want to put the ball in Bo Nix's hands if they don't have to. I just think there's going to be a little opportunity to get any momentum for Justin Herbert in this game. I don't see that he scores more than 12 fantasy points in this game against a very, very good Denver Broncos secondary. So Justin Herbert, yeah, like, sure, this is a start sit episode, but like, I'm perfectly fine. 1 quarterback league, see a bye. He's just a roster clog.
Yeah, it's crazy that he's gone from being a top 4 pick in dynasty startup leagues to now he's should maybe not even be rostered in most redraft leagues.
Shame.
Here's the real question this week. Spencer Rattler was just named the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. Are you starting Spencer Rattler or Justin Herbert?
Rattler, because I think he gives me more upside. Like that is crazy coming out of my mouth. That I feel stupid saying that, but like, I don't know what the upside is here for Herbert. I just don't.
No, I agree. I think I agree. Especially against Tampa, who just gave a 509 to Kirk last week.
Well, that's exactly it, right? I like the matchup a lot better too. Justin Herbert is obviously the better football player, but like, I think Spencer Rattler gives you more upside than Justin Herbert this week. Ty, you're sitting on something over there. You guys.
Ty's been giggling to himself for the last 3 minutes.
First, I will answer your question by saying neither. I'll just take the L this week. They'd rather start either one of the quarterbacks. But the craziest stats for Justin Herbert this year, the guy hasn't completed more than 17 passes in a game this year. He hasn't topped 30 dropbacks in a single game this year.
That's
It's the J.K. Dobbins show, and just stop the run on defense. Now, I will say, like, that is like Jim Harbaugh football. That's kind of what we were saying, like, is not going to happen. Like, they're going to need to throw the ball. That being said,
The hyperbole was real.
Yeah, it was real. Could things change coming out of the bye? Sure, there's always that potential, but I still don't know how healthy Justin Herbert is.
Yep.
There's no one to throw to in this offense outside of Ladd, who is there one week and not there another week. There's really no reason to start Herbert at this point, or even roster him, like you said.
Let's move on to the running backs here, fellas. Let's talk some running back starts of the week. Cameron, who is yours?
David Montgomery. And you know what? This one might be cheating, and I don't care.
It is.
It is
but
cheating.
I'll allow it.
It is. He's had 15 plus fantasy points in each of his 4 starts, a touchdown in each of his 4 starts, 17, 11, 23, and 12 rush attempts in his first 4 games. And he's 3rd in fantasy points inside the 5-yard line. He is exactly who we thought he was going to be at the start of the season. He is Dan Campbell's bell cow. They're going to use him inside the 5. He's going to score touchdowns. He might not have the receiving upside because of Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs might steal a touchdown here or there. But like you said, Ty, 52.5 point total in this one. Detroit's going to score touchdowns. If Detroit scores more than 3 touchdowns, the odds of Monty scoring has got to be like 90% at this point. It's just ridiculous because if they're in the red zone at all, it's give it to Gibbs, give it to Monty. Hey, we're inside the 5. Just give it to Monty.
I got nothing to add because Monty is such a smash start in this matchup. And he's someone that we love every single year since he's been signed to the Detroit Lions here. And people are like, yeah, but he's the second fiddle to Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't care. This team runs the football too well. He finds the end zone too often. He is going to pay dividends on his ADP, just like we predicted. So anything you want to add on top of that, Ty? Because I am in complete agreement here.
No, we can move on.
We can move on to your start of the week. I'll come right back to you. Who is it?
It's Najee Harris.
So gross, Ty. Two episodes
hold on,
in a row,
no,
he talks about Najee. 2 episodes in a row, he talks about Najee.
No, you guys can't call it gross when you agree with me based on your rankings. You can't call me gross. It's
still
gross for
gross.
all of us.
It's still gross.
Doesn't make it less gross.
Yeah, it doesn't mean I don't like my ranking.
I talked about how much of a unit Najee is in the second half of the season the past 2 years, and it's set up to happen again this year. I think the second half kind of emergence could start this week against Vegas. You know, I base those stats off of, first half of the season before the bye week and then after the bye week. We might get that a little early this year, again, because of the matchup that he gets with Vegas, who are allowing the 10th most rushing yards per game, the 7th highest yards per carry. And they just lost Christian Wilkins in the interior. So just a reminder, the guy is averaging 18 touches a game. So that volume with this matchup is bound to hit. It's kind of off-brand Josh Jacobs a little bit, the guy that's just getting fed and fed and fed. Not as efficient as Jacobs, but both have not found the end zone just yet. And in a worse offense. You get the point though. I think this is going to be a very good week for Najee.
I got him ranked as my running back 18. I kind of hate that ranking though. Like I'm looking at Najee in my lineup this week.
So just sit him at that point.
No, because because you highlighted the matchup is good. And if there's a guy who's going to get a handful of totes this week, like I would much rather take the shot on a Najee Harris than I would, spoiler alert, like a Rashad White this week, than I would on a Jerome Ford this week. I would much rather take the shot on Najee there. The real question is, the real one you could get me with is if Zach Moss doesn't play, I take Najee or Chase Brown this week.
Najee.
Ooh. I think I'd play Chase Brown.
Najee. Yeah, that's the right answer.
I think it's Najee, but man, I don't really want to.
Really? You think it's Najee, not Chase Brown? If Zach Moss is out this week against the Giants,
who have been sneaky good against the run this year.
Yeah, they haven't been bad. And I just don't trust Chase Brown as a pure runner. Like, I understand he gets more attempts. not like Najee's a pure runner, right? I mean, he's kind of like
He's a pure
lumbering
plotter, that's what
around
he
out
is.
there. Yeah. He's like, oh, maybe I'll fall into the hole on this one. Like, it's just like, he's not doing anything special, but Jalen Warren's still banged up. Cordero Patterson's a little banged up. If we know one thing about Arthur Smith, he's going to run the ball with the biggest back he has, whether he's good or not. So it's like he's going to get opportunities, and so I think I'm going to trust Najee there.
That's fine. I don't disagree with either of you. I like the reasoning and the logic is there. I just would rather take the guy who looks like he's shot out of a cannon every time he touches a football rather than, like you said, Najee Harris, where it's like, I don't know. There's a hole open here. Maybe I hit it this front. Maybe I don't. Let's play roulette and find out.
You don't want the guy that tries to hurdle a defender once a game. You don't want that. You don't want the highlight reel.
Yeah.
Until that gives me fantasy points, I'm good. I'll pass on that.
Yeah. Nobody with a 17-inch vertical goes for more hurdles than Najee Harris. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh man. Oh, my running back started the week. Tony Pollard of the Tennessee Titans. Look, Indy has been run on nearly 35 times per game this year. That is the most in the entire league. And any opportunity this Tennessee Titans offense gets to take the ball out of Will Levis's hands, you better believe they're going to do it after how this season started. Pollard has scored 15 plus fantasy points in 3 out of 4 games this year. He's gotten 16 plus carries in each of those games and finished as a top 20 running back in those same games as well. Ty, like, again, I don't want to pick on you for calling Tony Pollard a sell, but coming out of the bye, he gets a great matchup here with the Colts, gets another great matchup with the Buffalo Bills this next week. So, especially when you got fed 22 totes against the Miami Dolphins in week 4 before their bye. I know Tyjae Spears is going to slide in here as well. He's going to get his touches, but I mean, I absolutely love Tony Pollard in this matchup where, again, if the Tennessee Titans aren't forced to throw the football, I don't think they're going to force Will Levis to do that. Just put the ball in Tony Pollard's gut. Let him get to work.
So I don't think I'd say absolutely love about Tony Pollard in fantasy football, but I do agree that he could be a pretty decent start. Indianapolis Colts allowing second most rush yards per game with 157 per game right now. So whenever you get that kind of matchup, as long as, the running back is good enough that he can be competent, I'd probably start him.
And Ty agrees on that. He's sitting there like in his inner thoughts. He's like, do I agree? Do I not? It's Tony Pollard. It's your guy.
No, it's a matter of like, do I want to crap on your argument like you did for Najee Harris? But
I said I was fine with my rank. I didn't love my ranking, but it's somewhat justified based on the matchups and who's available.
Ty's just contemplating whether he wants to be a good guy or a bad guy.
Heel or face, baby. Heel or face. What do I go with? So I'll say it like this because I'm closer to your ranking, Lucas, than I am to Cam's. We all would start him this week. There is still the potential that Tyjae Spears gets more involved coming out of the bye week.
Yep.
That is a very real thing. But our ranking, I think, signifies that, hey, if he does continue to get the majority of carries like he has been, the upside is absolutely there with this matchup.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep riding the hot hand here in another great matchup that we could take advantage of in week 6. Running back sits of the week here, fellas. Cam, I'll start with you. This one stinks, but it's unfortunately the right call.
Yeah, it's Rico Dowdle. He's against the Lions, third best rush defense in the NFL right now, allowing under 100 yards a game. Obviously, they just got torched by Kenneth Walker, but if you think that Rico Dowdle is Kenneth Walker, I got news for you. He only has one game with over 11 attempts, and like I said, Detroit's just been very good. And for me, the real killer is in a matchup like this, you're hoping he finds the end zone, right? That would be kind of the goal, is that he gets a little bit of receiving work and he finds the end zone to be worth it. Well, inside the 20 so far this season, he has 3 attempts for -1 rushing yards. Sounds like Alexander Madison to me, so I would say win this matchup against a very good Detroit defense.
Yeah, if I get a Rico Dowdle isn't a below average running back, but again, a running back that is not of a Ken Walker caliber against a Detroit Lions defense on a team that honestly hasn't been running the ball well until last week for the entire year. I just have zero interest playing them against what's going to be a phenomenal Detroit Lions run defense in this matchup. Anything you want to pile on, Ty? You've got him at running back 20. I just saw that.
Yes.
What? I should say what, but like Cameron has him at 30. I have him at 27. So Cameron and I are in agreement here. You actually might disagree.
I think it's partially because we are in the middle of bye week. Like, there are not enough running backs that I would prefer to start over him when I know that Rico, yes, is in for a tough matchup, but he's likely to get more opportunities to touch the ball than some of the other guys that I think you guys have ranked ahead of Rico.
Zach Moss doesn't play this week. Chase Brown or Rico Dowdle?
Oh, probably Chase Brown.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Definitely Chase Brown.
Okay. I just, well, yeah, I knew that was it for you, Cameron. I was curious though with Ty, because right now you have Chase Brown and running back 28. Obviously Zach Moss potentially playing this week. So like that's a perfectly fine ranking. Not knowing that, but that's one where I'm like, okay, how high does Chase Brown skyrocket up then if you got Rico Dowdle all the way up at running back 20? Who's the other name that I saw in here that was fascinating? Tyjae Spears. Tyjae Spears you have behind Rico Dowdle? That's the name that I wanted to bring up.
Because that's also me assuming that Pollard is still going to get the majority of touches. If it's a 50-50, I might have more interest in playing Spears, but I still think Pollard's going to dominate touches there.
So for you, it's just a matter of like Rico Dowdle has taken over. This is his backfield. Doesn't matter if it's a good or bad matchup. I'm playing volume.
Yeah. I mean, and he's involved enough in the receiving game to still give you points that way. It's not going to necessarily overcome how bad the rushing production could be, but he's still going to be involved in some ways.
I'll come right back to you, Ty. Your running back sit of the week is who?
It's Javonte Williams. Not as gross as it may have been the first 3 weeks of the season because he's been the running back 18 the last 2 weeks. He's gotten 16 attempts for 77 yards in week 4, and then he got 13 for 61, but he got 5 receptions for 50 yards in week 5. He's just in for a rude awakening against the Chargers this week. They're allowing the 5th fewest yards per carry, 6th fewest yards per game, and they've only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground. That's a little redundant. Anyway, the only hope for Javonte is that the receiving work continues to go his way because the Chargers are giving up the 7th most receptions to the position. But similar to Rico in the sense that like the receiving work may not be able to overcome how bad the rushing production could be. And I don't even think it's a guarantee that he's going to continue seeing the volume that he has been getting in this kind of game. So I'd rather sit Javonte. I know it's been good the last couple of weeks. I just don't like the matchup for him this week.
I just don't want anything to do with the Denver Broncos anymore, man. Like I just that's where my line is. Like I feel like they're the gimme one every week where I'm like, which Denver Bronco can I pick to say that I don't want to play this week? I almost chose Cortland Sutton as my wide receiver sit of the week. I'm like, I can get a little bit better than a little bit more bold than Cortland Sutton this week, but
low fruit.
Yeah, that right. But this is a running back room where I have zero interest playing guessing games with them, even though, like you said, Ty, it's seemingly been fine for Javonte, but just not a backfoot I really want to play guessing games with.
Yeah, Javonte, it's honestly disappointing. We went from a couple seasons ago to being like, oh, wait till he has this backfield by himself. Yep. And I was just like, oh, yeah, Javonte Williams. And but to be fair, that way for all Broncos players. You're never like, yes, I got to start a Bronco this week. You're like, dang it, I'm down bad. I'm putting a Bronco in. So,
yes,
especially against this Chargers. I'm just, I'm completely out.
My running back sit of the week before we take a quick break here. Rachaad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This man has an EPA of negative 9.8 this year.
That's awesome.
That is atrocious. When this man touches the football, he is severely plummeting his team's chances of scoring, of increasing his team's point total. I mean, it is embarrassing. I know we just saw Kareem Hunt scamper for 102 yards on Monday Night Football against the Saints, but you just cannot trust Rachaad White in your lineup in any capacity right now. He only has 2 finishes inside of the top 30 running backs this year. This is a clear, like, bench him for higher upside options. I'm good if you want to go ahead and play Chase Brown over him this week, even with Zach Moss potentially being in the lineup this week if he's not coming in 100%. Like, this is one where it's like, sure, give me the guy who is far more efficient than the guy who can't figure out how to average more than 3.5 yards per carry this year.
It's gross. It's so disgusting. I got to think we want to start Bucky over Rachaad White. You got to think at some point Tampa goes, hey, we want to start Bucky over Rachaad White because the dude he gets touched and it's like he thinks he's playing flag football and has to drop to the ground. It's not even like he's trying out there to break tackles. I mean, I know he's trying, but it just when he just doesn't look like it. And it's brutal. It is so unbelievably brutal. He's averaging less points per game right now than Justice Hill.
Oh.
And Justice Hill has 19 carries on the season. So that should tell you pretty much all you need to know about Rachaad White.
Yeah, PPR machine Rachaad White, baby. Getting outproduced by PPR machine Justice Hill.
I would just like to say there was a point in the Atlanta Tampa Bay game. This was tweeted out by Nathan Yonke. Bucky Irving had more yards per carry than Rachaad White, even with Rachaad White's 56-yard run. And then it changed as the game went on, but there was a moment where, yeah, that should just tell you how bad it is with Rachaad White.
All right, enough talking about the bad fellas. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back with some more starts and sits for the pass catchers this week. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. We have covered our quarterback and running back starts and sits ahead of week 6. Let's move on to the pass catchers now, fellas, starting with the wide receivers. Cameron, who's your wide receiver start of the week?
Terry McLaurin. And I'll admit, I've been wrong on Terry so far this season. And it really just comes down to how well Jaden Daniels has been playing. Ty texted both of us about halfway through that Commanders game, and he goes, Cliff took off the training wheels. And it really looked like that on Sunday for this offense as they, were able pushing the ball down the field a little bit more, which only helps Terry. He's the wide receiver 12 for the last 3 weeks since Jaden Daniels' big Monday night game against Cincinnati, averaging 17.2 fantasy points per game. He's averaging 5 receptions on 8 targets for 88 yards and 0.6 touchdowns. That's pretty good, week to week from Terry. And now he's playing Baltimore. And Baltimore just gave up 392 passing yards and 5 touchdowns to Joe Burrow last week, and they have been getting torched by the pass all season long. They've been awesome against the run. It's them and Minnesota's best 2 run defenses right now.
Yep.
So Washington's going to need to throw the ball, and Terry's going to benefit from that.
Yeah, this is entirely like the Detroit Lions. This is a pass funnel defense. Baltimore is currently the highest neutral pass rate on defense in the league. So even when the game is within reach for their opponents, they are electing to take advantage and expose the secondary, which has been the case all year long. This is a smash spot for Terry McLaurin, especially if the Washington Commanders cannot run the football, which I'm kind of anticipating that to be the case for Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler this week. Ty, you're in on Terry McLaurin based on your rankings, but you're also looks like you're cooking something up in the back of your mind.
I just think back to the offseason and I was like, guys, I think we should be a little more in on Terry. And you guys were like, dude, it's Terry McLaurin. Like, you know what you're getting with the guy. Yeah. I'm just saying he's been cooking the last couple of weeks thanks to Jaden Daniels and Cliff taking the training wheels off. But still, like, I'm a little mad that we weren't more in on Terry. I know it looked bad. It looked scary at the beginning, but it's finally coming around now.
Yeah. I just never bought in on the reason that people were so in on Terry McLaurin was like, oh, Jahan Dotson's gone. Look at all the targets Terry's going to get. I'm like, cool. Like, is Terry going to become 170 target hog, like a 170 target hog? Like, I don't think so. He needs to start catching touchdowns for that to really change my mind. But we might start to see a corner being turned here.
Yeah, and I think that's really what it comes down to, was because the argument was being made that he was going to see a crap ton of targets. He's only gotten one game with 10, and he's kind of mixed in 8 and 6. But because the argument was he's going to get a crap ton of targets, that was believable to not buy in. But the fact now that he's being used downfield now gives it's a different perspective on the guy that would give you a better reason to be in on him now.
Yeah, Terry McLaurin is just a smash spot to start this week. He should be in your lineups, no questions asked. Ty, I'm going to come back to you. Who's your wide receiver start of the week?
Cam's flag plant, it's Diontae Johnson. We touched on it with Kirk. This Carolina defense is not stopping anybody this year. They're giving up the 9th most passing yards and the 6th most rushing yards. It just naturally creates a game script for Diontae to get a ton of volume, like we have seen the past, or we've seen in 2 or 3 games in the last 3 weeks. Crazy stat for the Panthers. And over the last 2 games, they've only led for 3 minutes. So they've been playing from behind more times than not. Now, the 6 targets last week, again, after the double-digit targets, wasn't great. But I will give that game a pass. Andy Dalton was pressured on nearly half of his dropbacks. There really was no way for Diontae or any Carolina player outside of Chuba Hubbard to really have a day with that kind of situation. What makes this matchup so great is, again, they're probably going to be playing from behind, but the Falcons are 4th in pressure rate according to Sharp Football. So Dalton will have time to deliver the ball. Diontae Johnson has been the guy that he's targeting in this offense. This is a smash start.
I'm a little bit more hesitant than both of you. Both of you have Diontae as a top 12 guy. He's still a start. He's my wide receiver 15 on the week. I just don't know if it's not like Andy Dalton's been getting better by the week. I think that's what's concerning to me here. It's like Diontae had his 2 great games, and I'm not trying to hitch my wagon onto those 2 great weeks. I'm recognizing, the honeymoon stage is definitely come and gone for Andy Dalton and the Panthers here. I'm just worrying we're going to start regressing towards the actual player that Andy Dalton is. And maybe Dave Canales, can turn things around here and, again, be the veteran quarterback whisperer. I'm just not as bought in this week. I think Diontae Johnson's a fine play. He's going to be in your starting lineup. He's a top 15 play for me, but I don't know if I can push him into a top 12 play.
And I get that, but my issue is Ty had his rankings done before me, and I couldn't let him have my flag plant as a better wide receiver than I was on the week. So I was like, shoot, now I guess now he's my wide receiver 11. I think they rebound a little bit. I think this Falcons team is clicking on offense. They really just didn't slow down the Bucs much last game through the year. So I think that, like Ty said, they're going to have to throw the ball. And so if they're going to throw the ball, it's going to go to Diontae Johnson.
So we just kind of hashed out one ranking discrepancy here for my start of the week. I'm personally offended that you two don't have DJ Moore inside of your top 15 wide receivers after he just put up 27.5 points this last week. The Jaguars secondary this year, my gosh, are they bleeding yardage to wide receivers? It was 134 to Alec Pierce this last week, 151 to Nico Collins the week prior, 72 to Khalil Shakir, 73 to Jerry Jeudy. Who's given up 73 receiving yards? Not quite who, but who's given up 73 receiving yards to Jerry Jeudy? They gave up 130 to Tyreek and 103 to Waddle in week 1. I mean, this is like the smash plays of all smash plays this week. I got DJ Moore ranked ahead of Terry McLaurin. You both have Terry McLaurin ahead of DJ Moore, but look, Ty, not to crap on one of your rankings again, but like wide receiver 19, man, that feels a little disrespectful. I'm not going to lie.
It's hard to have a guy be a fringe top 12 guy when 60% of his yards last week came from just 2 plays that also resulted in touchdowns. Like last week was insanely efficient for the guy. And I said this with Caleb Williams. I still can't trust the Shane Waldron offense. I just can't. it doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit right. So even having him as a top 20 guy, I'm like, okay,
Oh,
I acknowledge my tribal chief first and foremost, OTC. But I like the matchup. Caleb is targeting him. I can't deny that.
Yeah.
Cameron, be the voice of reason, Cameron, because you're right in the middle of Ty and I've got him at 13, Ty's at 19, you're at 16.
Well, if Caleb Williams is my start of the week and DJ Moore is an extremely talented wide receiver, I probably should have DJ Moore higher, honestly, and just move away from Ty and join the good side. But I do think all this said has really made me realize what we need at the end of the year is just an episode where we rank the offensive coordinators of the NFL.
Yeah.
So we can just bury Nathaniel Hackett, Shane Waldron, and Arthur Smith.
Please.
So we can just go off on how they're ruining fantasy football for us. I think that more than anything, that's what this conversation confirmed right here.
We'll move on to wide receiver sits of the week now. Keep it chugging along here. Cameron, who's your wide receiver sit of the week?
It is Christian Kirk. It was going to be Michael Pittman, but then he decided I'm going to miss a couple of weeks, and so that happened during the episode or during our recorded here. So
awfully rude of the guy.
I know, how dare he? Gosh, why can't he play so I can say that you shouldn't play him? But I guess now he's truly a sit. At least I wouldn't have been wrong. But Christian Kirk, you hear it, but he's had 3 good games in a row. 15, 18, and 12 fantasy points the last 3 weeks, right? I mean, he hasn't and that's after dropping 4.1 and 0.9 the 2 weeks before. So those were disgusting. I understand. But it's the same reason that I say to sit Trevor Lawrence. He's playing this Bears defense, who's been very good against the pass. Evan Ingram didn't practice today, but if he's back, I think that just continues to hurt Christian Kirk a little bit more. Last week, he only had 4 receptions. He ended up with 88 yards, but that's down from the 10 and 12 targets he saw the 2 weeks prior. And so I just think he's kind of coming a little bit back to earth again for where he is in this offense. And so I just don't really want anything to do with him against the Bears defense.
Yeah, this is a fight the temptation. You've seen him do well on your bench probably the last 2 to 3 weeks. Fight the temptation. You don't have to start him this week. This is not the matchup to do that in. Anything you want to add on to that, Ty?
He played 53% of snaps last Sunday. 61 of his 88 yards came on 1 play. There's not a whole lot to get excited about with Christian Kirk.
There is some to get excited about with your wide receiver sit of the week, but you're electing to make him a sit, Ty, regardless.
Yeah, I'm sitting Rashid Shaheed because he has Spencer Rattler throwing him the ball.
There it is.
I mean,
there it is.
I mean, it was a matter of when I made my notes for Shaheed, I was like, so Jake Hayner or Spencer Rattler, we're choosing the lesser of 2 evils. Honestly, 11 and 9 targets the past 2 weeks is just not happening, right? I'd be surprised if his role is the same with Rattler in at quarterback, because Shaheed had the 5th highest depth of target of all wide receivers with at least 10 targets. I doubt he's going to be used as downfield as he was. He may continue to run those routes, but I just don't think he's going to continue seeing the targets. I just doubt that those deep balls are going to connect. I know the Tampa matchup is nice, but gosh, if you've got any faith in Spencer Rattler, I just do not share that same sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of wide receivers this week in that wide receiver 28 to 38, 39, 40 range that you could kind of mix them up in any order, and I wouldn't blame you. Rashid Shaheed is one of those guys this week where I've got him on the upper end of that because I've seen the explosive plays, but should I bring him down more because it's Spencer Rattler at quarterback? Yeah, my ranking might be a little bit aggressive there. Do you feel the same way about your ranking, Cameron? Because you have him at wide receiver 31.
Yeah, I think when I was going through it, I just didn't factor in the Spencer Rattler effect enough until I kind of saw it show up on my screen while we were recording that he was named the starting quarterback this week. So I think when Ty first said it, I was like, "What are you doing against Tampa Bay?" You got lit up for 509, and now that I'm going, hey, you know what? It's Spencer Rattler. I think we're probably the ones that are going to be wrong in this one, and Ty's probably the one that's going to be right with his rankings.
All right, and at that point there was like no starting quarterbacks that had been
Yep.
confirmed yet, and so we're sitting here like, who's it going to be? And so yeah, now that we know that, as of this recording, Cameron and I would definitely be coming down in our rankings, and yeah, Rashid Shaheed been great this year, but not a matchup to target here in week 6. My wide receiver sit of the week, Ladd McConkey of the Los Angeles Chargers, very much for the same reason why I'm sitting Justin Herbert. I just want nothing to do with this Denver Broncos secondary. I don't necessarily think Ladd McConkey is going to get the Pat Surtain treatment in the slot, but I'm just this matchup just doesn't interest me, right? He's looked the part. McConkey has. He has 2 top 20 finishes this year, but this Broncos secondary has given up the second fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers this year. It's the game script I'm concerned about here. I think it's just 2 teams are going to want to try and like flex their muscles on. No, I can run the ball better than you. No, we're going to run the ball better than you, and I just think it's going to be a complete runoff, and I don't think Ladd McConkey's going to... It's going to be one of those games that we got in weeks 2 and 3, right? Where it's like, Ladd, where'd you go? You had a great week 1. Oh, when you came back, you were great in week 4, but like, I'm guessing we're only going to get like a mid-single digit week here from Ladd.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think. This Broncos defense has been good, and it's just really hard to start any wide receiver against them and all. I mean, they broke the streak and had a white corner and get a pick last week. So I mean, they're just doing everything right. They're hard to bet against, and so yeah, I'm gonna stay away from Ladd McConkey in this one. That's for sure.
Are you on like your Theo Vaughn era today? Like that's like the 3 one-liners you just ripped out consecutively.
I don't know. I told you
before every episode.
I warned the audio listeners. Like we had a vibe, and I think I was just reading myself more than YouTube, but that's where we're at today.
Ty, you in or out on Ladd McConkey this week?
Ladd is kind of the prototypical guy that you probably should sit this week, but you may have to play him because of how guys are on bye. Because the thing is, like, he did just get 5 for 67 and a touchdown against a Kansas City secondary that's also been pretty good. But at the same time, like you said, he could only have like 3 catches for like 30 yards, right? So it's like it's a low floor, but the ceiling isn't great. But again, because of who else is not playing this week, you may have to put him in your lineup.
Right. The floor seems low, but honestly, the ceiling is even lower. That's where I'm at with Ladd in this matchup here. All right, it's everybody's favorite segment of the week. Which dart do I throw this week at the tight end position? Somehow we're talking about 2 of the same guys from last week. So, Cameron, who's your tight end start of the week?
Sorry, it was. That's my bad. It is. It is Tyler Conklin.
Here, boy. Here, Cameron.
I know. I'm all over the place right now. He is tight end 7 or tight end 8 right now in targets on the season, with 27. Averaging over a little bit over 5 a game, which puts him right about the mark of 87 targets for the season, which would be 4 years in a row with 87 targets, which is just wild. But has no reason why you should start him. The Bills just locked down wide receivers, and I just think this game's going to be gross. So I think Tyler Conklin's going to get some decent volume in this one. And like you said, I mean, Travis Kelce is on bye, and Kobe Parkinson's on bye. So Tyler Conklin might be a guy you need to fill in.
The Gronklin, Ty, you in on the Gronklin this week? He's the Gronklin ever since he decided to absolutely bust my pick'em entry back in week 3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we're chasing volume, what I will say, the Rodgers ankle injury does kind of add a question mark. 2 things I'll just say for this Jets offense, but the fact that like Robert Saleh just got fired, you get like the bounce back game for the entire team for the Jets. Like that's a possibility too. So I think at this, when it comes to Conklin, like I'm not expecting too much to change with the Jets offense. He's been super involved.
Come right back to Ty. Who's your tight end start of the week?
Get the noise ready. We're starting Cade Otton, boys. We are starting Cade Otton. I say that because we literally call it the Cade Otton noise.
This is so disgusting. This is despicable.
It's.
Are we advising people to start Kate Otten? I do not subscribe.
Yeah,
Whoa,
this is-
hey.
you're gonna have to convince me too. This is like break class in case of emergency kind of start right here.
Gentlemen, we're chasing volume. That's what Kate Otten's been getting. I mean, he's gone for 8-9. He only had 4 targets, but he still finished with 44 yards. And sometimes 7.4 fantasy points is all that you need to be a top 12 tight end. Like, and kind of my favorite stat. It's just gonna gross you guys out. On the year, Kate Otten is actually a top 12 tight end in usage.
That's so disgusting.
So I know, like, I don't like it, but at some point we got to be like, hey, we're gonna chase the upside, if that's what we want to call it. The other part of this too, Saints have been like not so shut down to tight ends, and ever since like Jalen McMillan has kind of been out of the lineup is when Kate Otten has kind of gotten more involved in the receiving game. Maybe that happens again this week. You guys can say it's gross all you want. I know your rankings say it's gross, but he's been getting involved.
You better hope you have Tucker Kraft in your lineup because you can just start him when he's been the tight end 1 in back-to-back weeks. Case point made. Start of the week. Get him in there. No questions asked.
Hold on. How do you guys not have him as a top 5 tight end?
Who do I have ahead of him? I'm going to go look at that quick. I have Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, Jake Ferguson, George Kittle, Kyle Pitts ranked ahead of him, and I'm going to flip him and Kyle Pitts. So he will be top 5 for me.
There we go.
I'm going to stick with Kyle Pitts ahead of him, and I'm going to stick with, I think I got George Kittle and Sam Laporta ahead of him as well. I'm going to stay with that.
You've got Laporta ahead of him.
I got Laporta ahead. Yeah, I do.
I think I would be willing to play Tucker Kraft ahead of Sam Laporta this week. I hate that. Oh, I hate that came out of my mouth.
Welcome to Fantasy Football 2024.
Oh, gosh. We want to just get these sits over with and get the heck out of here. Cameron, who's your tight end sit?
Yeah, it's Pat Freiermuth. His offensive coordinator is Arthur Smith. I'm good. But he has 1 game with more than 4 receptions, 1 game over 49 yards, and he really has no upside unless Justin Fields is going to throw for 350 yards, and that's not happening again for the next 6 seasons. So I think we're good.
Ty Huba, who's your tight end sit of the week?
Well, it's Evan Ingram, but I don't really want to talk about this now ever since it was said that he didn't practice on Wednesday. So this might be kind of a cop-out sit because who knows, he may not even play again this week. But
say he suits up, though.
Sit him.
Well, I hope so. Great work.
Wait, start him as your sit of the week?
He's a top 3 option if he plays.
Sit him.
Sit him. He's coming back from injury if he plays against Bears defense, allowing the 9th fewest receptions and yards to tight ends. We've called Trevor Lawrence a sit. We've called Christian Kirk a sit. Evan Ingram's also a sit.
There is an unspoken rule in fantasy football now where if you get outscored by Charlie Kohler, you cannot be trusted in fantasy football in any capacity. So Mark Andrews, despite you getting 5 targets last week, 59 yards, 10 fantasy points. Way to go, my guy. Proud of you. Still sit of the week. Sit of the week. You cannot be trusted even against the Washington Commander secondary. Sneaky. You know what? They've been good at. They've been bad against wide receivers. Quietly good against tight ends. 7th fewest fantasy points allowed to the position this year. So Mark Andrews, hate to do it to you, my guy, but you are once again a sit of the week.
I will
go ahead.
Go ahead. I agree.
You want to know how bad it's been for Mark Andrews now that you bring up Charlie Kohler?
Yeah,
No,
I do.
don't.
I want to know now.
Charlie Kohler. Gosh, I can't say his last name. Charlie Kohler. Has either tied or outscored Mark Andrews in each of the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, shout out Charlie.
So he had 0-0 and then scored a touchdown. Is that what you're saying?
No, he had 4 when Andrews had 0. They both had 0, and then Charlie had, what was it? 15. To Andrews.
Shout out Charlie, man.
9. Yep.
Beautiful.
Shout out Charlie. Oh, he didn't even have 10. Shout out Charlie, man. Charlie Kohler. If he's outscoring you, you cannot be trusted in fantasy football in any capacity.
Droppable.
Make sure you follow us over on the socials. I am at Lucas Wenzel over on Twitter. CamLawFFF for Cameron. You can follow Tyler_Plath for Tyler. Excuse me. I thought I got through all three. I almost shorted Tyler out of that one. I got a vendetta against Tyler today.
You had one last week too.
I kind of did. I came at him for Pittman, and it was a neutral. Neither of us came out on top there. Pittman had a fine week.
He scored a touchdown, so he
was saved by the touchdown. Right. I got bailed out by the touchdown.
Yeah, he had his reception yardage, just for everyone at home. This is why he was going to be my sit last week. 1 yard, 2 yard, 2 yard, 5 yard, 23 yards. That's what his reception yardage last week.
Yeah, was not great. But make sure you follow the fellas accounts as well. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Actually, that's false. Not over on YouTube, but the Fantasy Football Fellas is our YouTube page here. Make sure you click that subscribe button, turn on those notifications as well. If you want even more fantasy football questions answered, make sure to head over to our Discord. We got a community of, I want to say 2,800 strong over there that's ready to answer all of your questions. Put in polls there. Community that's ready to engage with one another. So make sure you check that out. Link is down in the description of the podcast you are listening to. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. We will see you next week when we'll be back with some more trending and ending, a little bit more trade targets as well. And as always, 24 more players who will change your outcome of fantasy football for week 7. Best of luck in week 6, y'all. We'll see you next week. Deuces.
Deuces.